So if I look in the Windows Explorer window for my project scene, my project files, I see that now I have a zip file that contains everything that I need. In fact, let me double click it, and you'll see that as I navigate through, it's going to give me the exact directory structure, and it includes all of the textures that I need and excluded anything that I don't need. And this is the best way to turn things into me, because one, it'll be zipped, so it's going to be a smaller file size than if you just turned in if you turned in the files uncompressed. And also, I only get the files that are needed by the scene. I don't get any of those extra scenes that you for work in progress textures and your PSD files and everything else. These give me just the ones I need. So be sure you turn in your Maya scene as an archive scene. I will dock points if you give me just a mess of files like in previous projects. So now that you guys know how to use archive scene, be sure you turn in your Maya scene in this format. And here was the movie file that was exported, rendered out of Photoshop. And if I double click this, as you saw, the icon changed because I needed to reassociate with QuickTime before it was pointing to the wrong default program. So I might need to, because it's taller than my actual screen size, so what I might want to do is go to View, Half Size, and then I can drag out this corner, and then I can play, just to make sure everything looks fine. And as you can see, it's really nice quality, no banding, no compression artifacts. It's about as good as quality as you can have it, short of just rendering out raw frames without any kind of compression at all. And the hotkey for looping the playback is Control L, and then hotkey for playing is space, and then you can have a nice looping animation. And when the first frame wraps back onto, or I should say when the last frame wraps back onto the first, there shouldn't be any pause in there. It should just go smoothly. You shouldn't be able to tell without looking at the playhead down here. You shouldn't be able to tell that when it starts and when it stops. If you can tell, it means you might have that extra frame in there. Alright, and now that I have those two items, my archive scene and my movie file, I'm going to copy those, and I've already prepared a folder for turning in, and this is also going to be the naming convention I want you guys to use. Last name, first name, and then you can just call it final, or maybe to be more specific, just to keep things consistent, and we'll just call them all Leprechaun. And I just use all caps here. You don't have to. You can just use caps on the first letters if you want. So open this. I already have my reference images here, and I'll go through those with you guys in just a bit. But let me go ahead and paste in the files that I copied over. So these are going to be things that you have to have in order to get the full score. So again, the movie file that we rendered first in Maya, but then because of the better quality we get through Photoshop, we actually compiled all the frames in there. This is the archive scene from Maya that includes just the files I need, and then of course at least 10 reference images. And if you guys want ideas for what to use or what to grab for reference images, here I have two each for 5 different categories of references I wanted to see. So I'll just go through these real quick with you guys. Okay, it's maybe because because I'm recording video, it's not updating very well, but there it goes. So 18th century, kind of a brown colored suit. 18th century, kind of pinkish colored suit. Then I wanted to look for brass buttons. So here's a variety of designs for brass buttons, and here's something that's more specific that I could probably even use as a texture directly after editing it a little bit in Photoshop. A couple of old men faces, just to get kind of wrinkling in the character, and a couple for old metal lanterns. So there's one, and here's one that's a little more close up, just to see the detail on the metal. And of course, most likely you're going to have a lot more references than just 10, because ultimately the more references you have, the better, the more clearly defined your visual goals are for when you do your texture painting. And then here are a couple of examples of wooden floors. And certain ones you can even use directly as textures. So here I probably would need to undo the perspective distortion if I wanted to use these, but these are still usable, especially since this particular one is a very large high resolution file. So even for textures that you edit to become, or I should say even for images that you ultimately edit to become actual textures, you can include those in your reference images as well. Okay, so that is everything you need to turn in. A folder called reference images containing at least 10 of multiple categories for different parts of either your character or the vehicle that you're texture painting. The archive scene file, and also the movie file. And altogether the file size is probably going to be a little bit over 300, which is doable. So if yours is way higher than this, then it's probably because you're either rendering too high resolution, or some of your settings weren't set correctly. That's giving you really large files. So try to keep things definitely under 400 megabytes if possible, because that way I can just fit more files onto my thumb drive for grading purposes. Okay, and that's it. Have fun working on your final, and I expect to see great things.